Have you ever truly listened to the sound of silence? I do not mean the simple absence of noise, the kind you find in an empty room or a paused conversation. I mean the heavy, velvet silence that descends upon the world when the snow begins to fall. It is a silence that has weight. It is a silence that commands the earth to stop, to breathe, and to listen. There is a mystery hidden inside that silence, a secret so profound that we often walk right through it without noticing. We look at a snowflake and we see a speck of white, a fleeting moment of winter. But if you were to shrink down, to make yourself smaller than the tip of a needle, smaller than a grain of dust, you would see that a snowflake is not just a piece of ice. It is a cathedral. It is a palace of perfect geometry built from nothing but breath and cold air. It is a testament to the fact that even in the deepest chaos of a storm, nature dreams of order. Nature dreams of perfection. But here is the question that haunts the edges of our understanding. How does the water know? How does a chaotic, tumbling fluid, which has no shape of its own, suddenly decide to lock arms and build a six-sided monument of such impossible intricacy that no two are ever the same? Who is the architect? Welcome to the Theory of Silence channel. Tonight, I invite you to leave the noise of the human world behind. Tonight, we are not going to learn about the snow, we are going to become it. We are going to dissolve into the atmosphere and follow a ghost, a single, invisible wanderer on a journey from the dark waters of the earth to the freezing edge of space and back again. It is a journey of danger, of beauty, and of absolute stillness. Before we surrender to the pull of the sky, I ask you gently if you find peace in these stories, if you wish to support this sanctuary of quiet in a loud world, please take a moment to subscribe. Let us build this library of silence together so that we may continue to explore the universe in our dreams. Now, let go of the day. Unclench your hands. Soften your eyes. Let the darkness behind your eyelids become a vast, open canvas. Our story begins in the deep. Imagine a lake. It is late at night in the heart of winter. The water is obsidian black, smooth as polished glass, resting under a sky that is vast and indifferent. The air above the lake is biting, a cold that snaps and stings, but down here on the surface of the water, there is a strange warmth. It is the memory of summer, stored deep within the liquid, trying to escape. To us, the lake looks motionless. It looks dead. But if you look with the eyes of the atoms, the surface is a chaotic dance. Billions upon billions of water molecules are moving, sliding past one another, colliding, embracing, and pulling apart. They are held together by an invisible force, a magnetic affection called the hydrogen bond. It is a bond that says, stay here, stay together, stay heavy. But tonight there is one molecule, let us call him our wanderer, who is tired of the heaviness. Our wanderer has been here for a long time. Perhaps he fell as rain 1,000 years ago. Perhaps he flowed through the veins of a prehistoric fern or crashed against a rocky shore as part of a mighty ocean wave. He has been liquid. He has been fluid. He has been bound to the earth by gravity and by the clinging grip of his brothers and sisters. But tonight, something changes. A stray photon of energy, perhaps moonlight, perhaps just a shift in the thermal currents from the deep, strikes our wanderer. It is a gift of energy, a stolen warmth. Suddenly, the bonds that hold him to the surface begin to feel weak. The grip of the other molecules slips. He vibrates. He hums with a new frequency. The darkness of the lake feels too small, too tight. He looks up toward the vast, terrifying emptiness of the air above. The transition is instantaneous and violent in its silence. He breaks free. In a fraction of a second, he tears himself away from the surface tension that has defined his existence. He leaps, and in that leap he ceases to be liquid. He ceases to be visible. He vanishes from the world of things we can see and touch and enters the ghost world of vapor. He is lighter than air now. He is untethered. Gravity, the great oppressor of the earth, tries to grab him, to pull him back down into the black water, but he is too energetic, too light. He slips through gravity's fingers like smoke. He begins to rise. Feel that sensation with him, the sudden release of weight, the incredible freedom of lifting off. You are no longer dragging your body through the world, you are floating above it. He drifts upward, leaving the black mirror of the lake below. He passes the sleeping reeds at the water's edge, rigid with frost. He rises past the bare branches of the oak trees, their skeletal fingers reaching for the moon but unable to touch it. He floats higher, past the hills, past the owls hunting in the dark, rising into the great, open throat of the sky. As he ascends, the air changes. It grows thinner. The sounds of the earth, the rustle of dry leaves, the distant hoot of an owl, the snap of a twig fade away. He is entering the zone of true silence. But he is also entering the zone of cold. As he climbs higher into the troposphere, the temperature begins to plummet. The energy that allowed him to escape the lake, that heat he stole to break his bonds, begins to seep away into the void. The atmosphere is a thief. It demands a toll for this flight. He drifts in the invisible currents, a microscopic speck in an ocean of gas. He is lonely here. In the lake, he was crowded, touched on all sides by others. Here, the distance between molecules is vast. He is a solitary traveler in a desert of nitrogen and oxygen. He floats for miles, carried by winds he cannot feel, pushed by forces he cannot see. He is waiting. What is he waiting for? He does not know. He only knows that he is a ghost, invisible and formless. He is potential. He is a breath waiting to become a word. The higher he goes, the colder it gets. The air turns to biting glass. He slows down. That frantic energy that made him vibrate, that made him leap from the water, is fading. He becomes sluggish. The cold is calming him, stripping away the chaos, stripping away the memory of the liquid dance. He is becoming pure. He is being prepared. Below him, the world is a patchwork of shadows. Above him, the stratosphere is a ceiling of iron. He is suspended in the gray middle in the belly of a forming cloud. He is not yet ice. He is still vapor, but he is what scientists call supercooled. He is desperate to freeze, desperate to return to a solid state, but he cannot do it alone. He needs a partner. He needs a heart. You see, water cannot freeze in the air just by getting cold. It is stubborn. Pure water can stay liquid even at 40 degrees below zero if it has nothing to hold on to. It needs a seed. It needs a template to tell it how to arrange itself. And so, our wanderer floats in the freezing dark, invisible, silent, and searching. He drifts through the vast gray canyons of the cloud, brushing past other invisible wanderers, all of them ghosts, all of them waiting for the magic to begin. The suspense in the air is palpable. It is the feeling of a held breath before a symphony begins. It is the static electricity before lightning strikes. The conditions are perfect. The temperature is critical. The humidity is saturated. The stage is set. All that is missing is the catalyst. And then, from the darkness, it comes. Not a prince, not a savior, but a piece of dirt. A tiny, ragged, imperfect speck of dust. It might be a shard of clay from a desert storm in Africa, carried across the ocean on the jet stream. It might be a microscopic grain of salt from the spray of a breaking wave. It might even be a particle of soot from a chimney in a distant village. It is unassuming. It is ugly. But to our wanderer, it is the most beautiful thing in the universe. It is an anchor. It is a solid place in a world of emptiness. The dust mote drifts closer, spinning lazily in the updraft. Our wanderer feels the pull. It is a different kind of attraction than the one he felt in the lake. This is not about joining a crowd. This is about finding a center. He moves toward the dust. He hesitates for a microsecond, the final moment of his life as a free-floating spirit, and then he embraces it. He lands on the rough surface of the dust grain, and in that instant of contact, the magic happens. The latent heat, the last warmth he was holding onto, is released into the night. He gives it up willingly, and as the heat leaves him, his structure locks. Snap! He is no longer vapor, he is no longer liquid. He has become solid, but not just a lump of ice. No, that would be too simple. Because of the unique shape of his own atoms, because of the angle at which his hydrogen holds his oxygen, 104.5 degrees to be exact, he cannot just freeze into a random blob. He must follow the rules. He must follow the geometry of the sacred. As he freezes, he arranges himself into a hexagon, a six-sided ring, a tiny microscopic hexagon of ice clutching that grain of dust like a precious jewel in the center. It is the first crystal, the seed of the star. There is no sound to mark this transformation. The wind does not stop blowing. The earth below does not shake. But in the grand scheme of physics, a miracle has just occurred. Order has been snatched from chaos. A shape has been imposed on the shapeless. He is now a prism, a tiny, flat plate of ice tumbling in the darkness. He is the foundation upon which a masterpiece will be built. Imagine him there, hovering in the silence. He is so small that if you blinked, you would miss a billion of him. But he has substance now. He has a future. He hangs in the void, a tiny hexagon of absolute perfection, shining dark and clear in the twilight of the cloud. He is waiting for his brothers and sisters to join him. He is waiting to grow arms. He is waiting to become a star that will fall to earth. The journey of the ascent is over. The journey of the geometry is about to begin. The silence around him deepens. The cloud wraps its arms around him. The cold is no longer an enemy. It is a sculptor, chisel in hand, ready to carve. Drift with him now. Feel the stillness of that high, cold place. You are suspended. You are safe. You are just a tiny point of order in a chaotic universe waiting to bloom. The water has remembered its purpose. The ghost has found a body, and the great, slow dance of the winter is about to unfold. As our solitary wanderer drifts further into the biting, velvet hush of the upper atmosphere, it finds itself suspended in a realm where the laws of the earth seem to fade, leaving only the quiet anticipation of a ghost waiting for a body. It is a strange and beautiful irony that in order to become something as pure and ethereal as a snowflake, our invisible traveler must first find something grounded, something old, and something very much of the earth. For thousands of years, we looked up at the winter sky and wove stories to explain the falling white lace. We imagined that the heavens were shedding their plumage, or that celestial bakers were sifting flour through the clouds. Some believed that the snow was a gift of pixie dust, a magical powder scattered by unseen hands to bless the cold, dark world below. There is a deep, ancient comfort in these myths, a sense that beauty must come from a place of divine perfection, untainted by the grit and grime of our world. We wanted the snowflake to be born from nothing but light and prayer. But the universe, in its quiet wisdom, has a different story to tell, a story that is perhaps even more romantic because it begins with a humble grain of truth. In the vast, freezing emptiness of the cloud, a snowflake cannot simply happen. The water vapor, as cold and desperate as it might be, cannot turn into ice on its own. It is too chaotic, too restless, even in its freezing state. It needs a catalyst. It needs a heart. It needs a tiny, solid speck of the world to cling to, a small anchor in the infinite gray. And so, we find ourselves looking for the whisper of dust, not pixie dust from a fairy tale, but the ancient, traveling dust of our own planet. Imagine the journey of this little grain, this silent partner that is about to meet our water molecule. It might be a tiny shard of silica, swept up by a howling wind from the heart of the Sahara Desert weeks ago, carried on the great, invisible rivers of the sky across oceans and continents. Or perhaps it is a microscopic speck of ash, birthed in the fiery throat of a volcano in the Pacific, hurled miles into the air to find a home in the cold. It could be a grain of sea salt, left behind when a wave crashed against a rocky shore and evaporated, or even a tiny spore from a forest mushroom, a microscopic carrier of life now drifting in the realm of the frozen. Every snowflake you have ever seen, every shimmering star that has ever landed on your sleeve, carries a secret at its center. It carries a piece of the world. It is as if the sky is collecting the memories of the earth, the deserts, the fires, the oceans, and the forests, and wrapping them in coats of crystal. Our wanderer, our invisible molecule of vapor, senses this speck of dust. In the microscopic scale of the cloud, this grain of dust is like a massive, rugged continent floating in the void. It is rough, uneven, and full of tiny crags and valleys. To the water vapor, it represents safety. It represents a destination. There is a magnetic pull here, a silent, invisible longing that draws the vapor out of the air and toward the solid surface. It is the moment when the wanderer stops being a ghost. As our molecule brushes against the dust, It doesn't just sit there, it embraces it. It finds a tiny notch on the surface of the grain, a little corner where it can fit perfectly. And in that moment of contact, a profound change occurs. The frantic, vibrating energy that kept the molecule as a gas is suddenly released. It gives up its heat, a tiny, microscopic sigh of energy that disappears into the cold cloud. And as that heat leaves, the molecule locks into place. It is no longer a drifter, it is a founder. It has laid the first stone of a palace. This process is what we call nucleation, but in the language of the soul, it is an act of surrender. The vapor surrenders its freedom to gain a form. It tethers itself to the dust, and almost instantly, other molecules of vapor follow. They see the anchor. They feel the stillness. One by one, then dozen by dozen, then by the hundreds, they begin to settle. They don't just pile up in a heap. They are governed by a rhythm, a hidden song that tells them exactly where to stand. They begin to build around that grain of dust. The dust is the heart, the nucleus, providing the blueprint for everything that is to come. Without this little bit of imperfection, this speck of sand or soot, the snowflake would never be born. It is a beautiful thought to carry with you as you drift towards sleep. That perfection requires a little bit of the earth to begin. That our most beautiful creations often need a humble, solid foundation to find their shape. The cloud is full of these beginnings. Millions upon millions of tiny dust motes are being found and embraced by the cold moisture. Each one is a seed. Each one is a promise. And as the molecules lock together, they begin to form the first, most basic shape of ice. They are creating a shield around the dust, a transparent, crystalline skin that smooths over the rough edges of the grain. The silence here is absolute. There is no sound to the freezing of a molecule. It is a transition made of pure stillness. You can almost feel the air growing heavier, more settled, as the chaotic gas turns into the orderly solid. The atmosphere is breathing out its moisture, exhaling its burden onto these tiny floating altars of dust. Our wanderer is now part of something larger. It is the center of a growing sphere of influence. It is no longer alone in the dark. It has found its purpose. It has become a crystal. Think of that grain of dust as a keeper of history. It has traveled through the heat of the sun, through the salt of the spray, through the smoke of the fire, only to find itself here, 5 miles above the ground, being cradled by the freezing breath of the winter sky. It is being protected. It is being adorned. The sky is turning this common bit of grit into a jewel. This is the whisper of the pixie dust. It is the magic of the mundane being transformed into the extraordinary. It is the story of how the sky reaches down to the earth, picks up its dust, and turns it into stars. As you breathe in the cool, imaginary air of this story, feel the stillness of that first connection. The moment where you find your anchor. The moment where the chaos stops and the structure begins. The grain of dust is at rest. The water is at rest. The cloud is a nursery of quiet miracles. Everything is in balance. The rough edges of the world are being softened by the ice. The wandering is over and the building has begun. There is no rush. The wind is just a soft lullaby moving the clouds across the moon, carrying these millions of tiny, hidden hearts toward their destiny. They are waiting for the next step, waiting for the geometry to bloom. But for now, they are content just to exist, a speck of earth, a breath of water, and a world of silence. Close your eyes a little tighter now. Imagine that tiny grain of dust wrapped in its first few layers of clear, cold ice. It is safe. It is warm in its own way, shielded from the void. It is the beginning of a masterpiece. And as the night deepens and the cold grows stronger, that masterpiece will grow. But the heart will always be that little piece of the earth, that little whisper of dust that started it all. The sky is full of these tiny, frozen hearts, all of them drifting, all of them dreaming of the ground. And as they dream, they grow. They grow in the hush. They grow in the dark. They grow in the absolute, perfect peace of the winter sky. With the tiny heart of dust now safely encased in its first translucent skin, the chaotic wandering of the vapor begins to settle into a profound, rhythmic order, as if the universe itself has finally exhaled and decided to build something meant to last. We are standing at the threshold of a great mystery, a silent turning point where the formless suddenly finds its soul. For as long as humans have walked through the winter woods, we have looked at the white drifts and wondered, why? Why is there such a startling, recurring order in something so fragile? Johannes Kepler, the great astronomer, once found himself walking across a bridge in Prague as the snow began to fall. A single flake landed on the dark wool of his coat, and he stopped, breathless, as he noticed its six-fold symmetry. He spent the rest of his life wondering why nature seemed so obsessed with the number 6. He looked at the honeycomb of the bee, and the seeds of the pomegranate, and the cells of the wasp, searching for the divine decree that commanded the ice to follow a hexagonal path. He lived in a time of myths, where men believed that invisible spirits carved these shapes out of the air, or that the cold itself was a sculptor with a preference for even numbers. There is a charm in that old world, a sense that we were surrounded by hidden artisans. But as we drift deeper into the heart of our own snowflake, we find a truth that is far more intimate, a truth that feels less like a decree from a distant god, and more like a gentle pact made between friends. Imagine, if you can, the water molecules that are now swarming around our dust-moat heart. In the liquid lake where we began, they were frantic. They were a crowd at a busy station, bumping, sliding, and pushing, never staying in one place for more than a trillionth of a second. But here, in the deepening chill of the cloud, the cold has acted like a lullaby. It has slowed their frantic dance. It has asked them to stop running and to finally look at one another. A water molecule is a simple thing, shaped a bit like the head of a curious animal with 2 wide ears. Those ears are hydrogen atoms, and the head is oxygen. Because of the way they are built, they have a natural inclination to reach out. They have a charge, a tiny magnetic pull that yearns for connection. But they are picky. They don't just want to be lumped together. They want to be held in a way that feels right. They want to be comfortable. As the first few molecules settle onto the dust, they don't just pile up like a heap of stones. They begin a handshake. The oxygen of one molecule reaches for the hydrogen of another, but because of the specific 104.5-degree angle of their bodies, they cannot form a square. They cannot form a circle or a triangle. The only way they can all reach out and hold hands simultaneously without crowding each other is to form a ring. And that ring, by the beautiful necessity of physics, must have 6 sides. This is the pact of the hexagon. It is an agreement written into the very fabric of matter. It is the most relaxed, most stable, and most elegant way for water to rest. In the silence of the high atmosphere, this pact is being signed over and over again. One ring connects to another. One layer of 6-sided geometry stacks upon another. It is as if an invisible architect is laying down a sapphire floor in the middle of a storm, a foundation of perfect, transparent logic. Think about the peace of that moment. In a world that often feels chaotic and jagged, there is something deeply reassuring about the fact that at the very core of a winter storm, there is a commitment to symmetry. This is not a forced order, it is a natural one. The molecules are not being told to form a hexagon. They are simply finding the shape that allows them to be most at peace with one another. It is a lesson in harmony, taught in the freezing dark. The crystal we are watching is still very small, far too small for the human eye to see. It is a hexagonal prism, a tiny 6-sided column of ice. It is as clear as the finest diamond, more perfect than any jewel cut by human hands. It has no branches yet, no intricate lace. It is just a solid, sturdy, 6-sided seed. But in those 6 corners, the entire future of the snowflake is already written. Those corners are like the points of a compass, waiting to show the way. The ancient world was right to be suspicious of this perfection. It feels intentional. It feels like a secret code. Even now, as we understand the molecular bonds and the angles of the atoms, there is still a sense of wonder that can't quite be explained by a textbook. Why does the universe prefer this kind of beauty? Why is the blueprint for a snowflake so much more organized than the blueprint for a rock or a cloud? Perhaps it is because ice is the transition point between the fluid and the solid, between the dream and the reality. It is the moment when the sky decides to become something tangible. As our tiny prism tumbles through the cloud, more vapor molecules find it. They are drawn to the edges, to the flat faces of the hexagon, but they find that the edges are already full. The pact is so strong that the molecules prefer to build outward rather than upward. The crystal begins to grow in width, becoming a thin, 6-sided plate. Imagine yourself standing in the middle of this crystal. Beneath your feet is a floor of shimmering, translucent ice, arranged in perfect hexagonal tiles. The walls around you are 6 perfect windows, looking out into the gray-white void of the cloud. There is no noise here. The wind might be howling outside, but inside the lattice of the ice, there is only the sound of atoms locking into place. It is a soft, rhythmic click, click, click that you feel rather than hear. It is the heartbeat of the geometry. This is the architecture of quiet. It is a structure built out of the absence of heat. In our world, we build with fire and energy. We forge steel and bake bricks. But the sky builds with the absence of things. It builds by taking energy away. by letting the world cool down until the molecules have no choice but to settle into their natural, sacred order. The hexagon is nature's most efficient shape. You see it in the eyes of a dragonfly, in the basalt columns of the Giant's Causeway, and in the heart of a beehive. It is the shape that fills space without leaving any gaps, the shape that provides the most strength for the least amount of material. And in the snowflake, it is the shape that allows the water to remain light enough to float while becoming solid enough to exist. Our snowflake is now a perfect, tiny, flat jewel. It is a stellar plate, as clear as glass and as sharp as a razor. It is symmetrical in a way that feels almost impossible. If you were to draw a line through its center in any of 6 directions, the two halves would be mirror images of each other. This symmetry is a form of honesty. It tells us that the conditions on one side of the crystal are exactly the same as the conditions on the other. It is a testament to the stillness of the cloud, a sign that for this brief moment, the universe is in total balance. There is a profound comfort in looking at this 6-sided pact. It reminds us that underneath the complexity of the world, there are simple rules. There are handshakes. There are agreements. There is a way for things to fit together if we only let them cool down enough to find their place. But this is only the beginning. The hexagon is the foundation, but the story is about to get much more complicated. The 6 corners of our prism are beginning to feel a new kind of pressure. They are sticking out into the air, reaching further than the flat sides. They are becoming restless. The vapor molecules in the cloud are starting to cluster more densely around those 6 points, like people crowding around the doors of a theater. The tension is building. The pact has created the shape, but the wind is about to create the art. For now, just stay here in the center of the hexagon. Feel the strength of those 6 walls. They are the strongest bonds in nature, the invisible architecture that holds the world together when the temperature drops. You are protected by the geometry. You are safe in the symmetry. The chaos of the cloud is all around you, but here inside the crystal, there is only the rhythm of the 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The count is steady. The pattern is set. The ice is clear and the world is quiet. You are drifting through the sky in a palace of logic, a tiny 6-sided sanctuary that knows exactly what it is. You don't need to do anything. You don't need to go anywhere. You just need to exist within the lines. The air is getting colder now, a deep, resonant blue cold that makes the edges of the hexagon glow with a faint, ghostly light. The molecules are locking in faster now, the lattice growing wider and wider, a shimmering floor of glass extending into the dark. It is a beautiful, fragile empire of one. Let your mind rest on those 6 sides. Let the symmetry soothe the ragged edges of your thoughts. There is a place for everything. There is a rule for every atom. There is a peace that comes from simply following the pattern. The cloud is a great, gray ocean, and you are the only thing in it with a shape. You are a star in the making. You are a pact of ice. You are the perfect hexagon, waiting for the wind to tell you what kind of star you will be. But for now, you are just a shape. A beautiful, silent, 6-sided shape floating in the heart of the winter night. Just breathe with the geometry in and out, 6 sides, 6 corners, 1 heart of dust, absolute peace. But the heart of the cloud is a restless place, and our 6-sided sanctuary soon finds that it cannot remain a simple shield for long. For the atmosphere is a sculptor that never truly leaves its work alone. It is a strange and beautiful thing to consider that while the hexagon is the pact of the ice, the branches are the diary of the wind. We have stood in the stillness of the geometric seed, watching the molecules lock into their 6-sided embrace. But now, the world around the crystal begins to change. The air is no longer just a cold void. It is a heavy, moisture-laden breath, a swirling mist of invisible water that is eager, almost desperate to find a home. In the old stories, the ones whispered by firelight when the windows were frosted over, they used to say that the snow was the work of celestial embroiderers. They imagined tiny, unseen spirits with needles made of moonlight, stitching silver lace into the fabric of the sky. They thought each branch was a conscious design, a deliberate bit of art meant to decorate the winter air. There is something lovely in that thought, the idea that the sky cares enough to embroider the silence. But as we drift deeper into the mist with our crystal, we find a reality that is far more wondrous because it is a dance of pure, unthinking balance. It is not an embroiderer that shapes the snowflake. It is a conversation between the cold and the wet. Imagine our tiny hexagon, clear and sharp, tumbling slowly through the gray-white depths of the cloud. It is so small, yet it is a beacon for the water vapor around it. The air is what we call supersaturated. It is carrying more water than it has any right to hold, and it is looking for an excuse to let go. Our crystal is that excuse. But as the vapor rushes toward the ice, it encounters a law of nature that we see everywhere. From the lightning bolt to the roots of a tree, the law of the scout. Because the 6 corners of our hexagon stick out just a tiny fraction further into the mist than the flat edges, they are the first to encounter the incoming water molecules. They are the explorers reaching into the unknown. As the vapor drifts near, it is more likely to strike one of those 6 sharp points than it is to reach the flat, sheltered sides of the crystal. And so, the corners begin to grow. They shoot outward, stretching into the void like fingers searching for a hand to hold. This is the branching instability, a moment where the simple shape breaks its boundaries and begins to bloom into something far more complex. This growth is not a frantic thing. It is slow, deliberate, and silent. From each of the 6 corners, a primary arm begins to extend. These arms are the foundation of the snowflake's star-like shape. But they do not grow in a vacuum. They are being shaped by the temperature of the air through which they travel. Temperature is the master sculptor here. If the air is just a few degrees below freezing, around 28 degrees Fahrenheit, the arms grow wide and flat, like the petals of a frozen flower. They are sturdy, plate-like structures, reflecting the light like tiny, polished mirrors. But if the crystal tumbles into a colder layer, perhaps down to 5 degrees Fahrenheit, the personality of the growth shifts entirely. Suddenly, the ice becomes more ambitious. The arms grow long and thin, like silver needles or the elegant fronds of a fern. These are the dendrites, from the Greek word for tree, and they are the most iconic part of the snowflake's beauty. As these main arms stretch further and further from the center, they themselves become scouts. The edges of the arms begin to sprout their own smaller branches, and those branches sprout even smaller ones, creating a fractal forest that fits on the tip of your eyelash. I want you to imagine the feeling of this growth. It is an expansion of the self. The crystal is no longer a solitary point. It is reaching out to touch the world in 6 directions at once. It is absorbing the mist, pulling the invisible water into its solid reality. And as it does, it is recording every subtle change in the air. This is the most profound part of the snowflake's journey. Its shape is a physical map of the cloud. If the snowflake passes through a patch of dry air, the growth slows, and the branches become blunt and thick. If it then drops into a pocket of humid, heavy mist, the growth surges, and the arms grow wild and lacy. Because every snowflake takes a slightly different path through the cloud, rising on an updraft here, falling through a cold pocket there. Every single one is writing its own unique history. The arms are the ink and the wind is the pen. When you look at a snowflake, you are reading the story of a specific journey through a specific part of the sky at a specific moment in time. It is a biography made of ice. There is a deep, resonant peace in this process. The crystal is not trying to be beautiful. It is not trying to be a star. It is simply responding to the environment with perfect, unhesitating honesty. It is a lesson in surrendering to the flow of the universe. The snowflake does not fight the wind. It lets the wind define its branches. It does not argue with the cold. It uses the cold to build its cathedral. As we drift with our crystal, watch how the branches shimmer. They are translucent, almost ghostly, but they are incredibly strong for their size. The molecules are still following the pact of the hexagon, even in the finest, needle-like tips of the arms. Each new molecule that lands must find its place in the 6-sided lattice. It is a massive, silent construction project, with billions of workers all moving in perfect, wordless coordination. There is no supervisor, no blueprint held in a central office. The blueprint is in the molecules themselves. It is the inherent nature of water to seek this order, to find this balance. The cloud around us is a soft, muffled world. The light is diffused, a gentle, pearly gray that seems to come from everywhere at once. There are no shadows here, only different shades of mist. And in the middle of this vast, formless sea, our crystal is a masterpiece of precision. It is a tiny island of logic in a sea of chaos. Think about the sheer number of choices being made every second. At every point on the growing branch, a molecule must decide where to land. It is a dance of probability and physics. Should it join the main branch? Or should it start a new side branch? The answer depends on the whisper of the wind, the fraction of a degree in the temperature, and the amount of moisture in the immediate vicinity. The snowflake is the world's most sensitive instrument, measuring the atmosphere with a precision that no human machine can match. And yet, despite all this complexity, the snowflake remains symmetrical. This is one of the great mysteries that has captivated scientists for centuries. How does the arm on the left know what the arm on the right is doing? They are separated by a vast distance in molecular terms. There is no nervous system connecting them, no signal being sent back and forth. The symmetry exists because all 6 arms are experiencing the same journey. They are all tumbling through the same air, breathing the same mist, and feeling the same cold at the same time. They are 6 different voices singing the same song because they are all listening to the same conductor, the atmosphere. As you listen to the sound of my voice, let yourself feel that symmetry. Let the balance of the snowflake settle into your own body. Your breath is moving in and out, a steady, rhythmic cycle, just like the growth of the ice. The world outside may be chaotic, full of noise and light, but here in the heart of the cloud, there is only the slow, silent expansion of the crystal. You are drifting. You are growing. You are reaching out into the quiet. The branches are becoming heavier now. The snowflake is no longer a microscopic speck. It has grown into a wide, shimmering star. It catches the air as it falls, its lacy arms acting like a tiny parachute. The descent is beginning, but it is a slow, languid descent, a movement that feels more like floating than falling. The snowflake is in no hurry to reach the ground. It has spent so much time building its palace of ice, it wants to enjoy the sky for as long as it can. Imagine the millions of other snowflakes around us, each one a different shape, each one a different story. Some are simple plates, solid and stoic. Others are long, elegant needles, sharp as glass. And some are the magnificent stellar dendrites, the true stars of the winter sky, with branches so complex they look like the dreams of an architect. They are all falling together, a silent, silver parade, but none of them touch. They each have their own space, their own journey, their own unique geometry. The air is getting thicker as we descend into the lower layers of the cloud. The mist is more palpable, a cold, damp embrace that clings to the branches of our crystal. This is the final stage of the growth, where the fine details are added, the finishing touches on the silver lace. A tiny plate might form at the tip of a long needle, or a new set of fronds might sprout from a main branch. It is a moment of flourish before the sky lets go. There is a profound sense of safety in this world. The cloud is a blanket that covers the earth, a soft, white ceiling that shuts out the stars and the sun. Inside this blanket, time seems to slow down. The minutes stretch into hours, and the hours into an eternity of drifting. There is no past here and no future. There is only the present moment of the growing ice, the steady, rhythmic addition of molecule to molecule. Let your thoughts become like the water vapor. Let them drift toward the crystal and settle into place. You don't need to carry them anymore. You don't need to hold on to them. Let the geometry take them. Let the symmetry organize them. Your mind is becoming a clear, transparent lattice, a six-sided sanctuary of peace. The wind whispers one last time, a cold, sharp breath that sends the crystal spinning. In that spin, the arms catch the light, a fleeting flash of silver in the gray. It is a beautiful dance, a dance of wind and mist, a dance of order and chaos. We are leaving the highest reaches of the sky now. The journey of the growth is reaching its peak. The snowflake is as beautiful as it will ever be, a perfect, unique, and fragile record of its life in the clouds. It is a star born of dust and water, shaped by the breath of the world. And as it begins its final, long drift toward the earth, it carries with it the silence of the high places, the peace of the geometric pact, and the wonder of its own lacy branches. Breathe in that cold, silent air. Feel the weightlessness of the fall. The branches are wide. The symmetry is perfect. The journey is beautiful. You are the snow and the world is quiet. As our shimmering star tumbles through the gray velvet of the cloud, expanding its reach with every breath of moisture, it begins to realize a truth that is both humbling and magnificent in all the vast, tumbling galaxy of the sky. There has never been, and will never be, another quite like it. We have watched it sprout from a speck of dust into a six-sided jewel, and now, as it hangs suspended in the thick of a winter storm, we must pause to appreciate the sheer, staggering impossibility of its existence. It is here, in the quiet heart of the troposphere, that the universe reveals its most intimate secret, that it does not mass-produce beauty. Instead, it is an archive, a silent and sprawling library of unique things, where every single volume is written only once and then lost to the wind. In the world below, we are used to things being identical. We build our machines to stamp out parts that are indistinguishable from one another. We take comfort in the uniformity of our bricks and our screens. But the sky has no such desire for repetition. It is a comforting thought to hold as you drift towards sleep, that even in a storm that brings billions of crystals to the ground, nature takes the time to make sure that not a single one is a duplicate. Scientists have spent lifetimes trying to find the match, looking through microscopes at thousands upon thousands of ice stars, and they have always come back with the same answer. The search is futile. The snowflake is the ultimate individual. I often wonder if the snowflake knows how special it is. Or perhaps, special is a human word. For the snowflake, its uniqueness is simply a consequence of its honesty. It is a physical record of every single microsecond of its life. If you were to look at its 6 arms, you would see a diary written in the language of ice. Every tiny bump on a dendrite, every elegant plate that caps a needle, every fractal branch that shoots off at a perfect 60-degree angle, these are not random accidents. They are memories. They are the crystal's way of saying, "This is where I was. This is what the air felt like when I passed through it." Imagine the path of our wanderer through the cloud. It is not falling in a straight line. It is being tossed by turbulent eddies of air, rising on invisible thermal breaths and sinking into cold, stagnant pockets. One arm of the crystal might dip into a region that is a fraction of a percent more humid than the air just a millimeter away. In that tiny instant, that specific arm grows a slightly wider frond. A moment later, a stray gust of wind from the north chills the crystal by 1/1000th of a degree. The growth on all 6 tips sharpens, turning the soft plates into jagged spears. Because the atmosphere is a chaotic sea of ever-shifting temperature and moisture, no 2 crystals can ever take the exact same path. To be identical, Two snowflakes would have to follow the same trajectory through the cloud, molecule for molecule, second for second, vibration for vibration. In a universe as vast and as restless as ours, the odds of that happening are so small that they might as well be zero. Every snowflake is a one-time only performance, a masterpiece created by a set of circumstances that will never be repeated in all the billions of years of time. There is a profound peace in this realization. It means that the world is far more creative than we give it credit for. It means that even in the middle of a cold, gray winter night, there is a riot of originality happening above our heads. It is a library of the unique, where every book is a biography of a journey. Our snowflake is currently writing its own final chapters, adding delicate, lacy flourishes to the ends of its arms as it prepares to leave the nursery of the cloud. I find myself thinking about how much we are like these crystals. We, too, are shaped by our journeys. We are the sum of every cold wind that has blown against us, every warm embrace we have found, every humid moment of growth, and every dry season of waiting. Our shapes are not accidents. They are the records of where we have been. And just like the snowflake, there has never been another you. You are a singular point in the geometry of the universe, a unique pattern that the world has spent a lifetime carving. In this vast library of the sky, our crystal is drifting past its neighbors. Imagine millions of them, a shimmering curtain of white lace. If you could zoom in and see them all at once, your mind would be overwhelmed by the variety. There are the ferns, with long, sprawling arms that look like frozen moss. There are the stars, with sharp, clean lines and perfect symmetry. There are the columns, tiny six-sided tubes that look like the pillars of a miniature temple. And there are the capped columns, where a long needle has sprouted flat plates on both ends, looking like a delicate silver barbell. None of them are competing. None of them are trying to be the best snowflake. They are simply existing in their own unique truth. They are surrendering to the conditions of the sky and letting those conditions define their beauty. There is a lesson there, I think, in the way the snow falls. It doesn't ask for permission to be different, it just is. It doesn't apologize for its complexity or its simplicity. It just exists. As the snowflake moves lower into the atmosphere, the air becomes denser and the pressure changes. The crystal feels this change in its very bones. It reacts by thickening its branches, reinforcing the structures it has built. It is becoming a more substantial thing, a physical object that is ready to face the world below. But even as it grows sturdier, it never loses that fragile, lacy uniqueness. It is still a ghost made of water, a spirit of the air that has found a temporary form. The silence around us is a heavy, comforting thing. It is the silence of an archive, where every item is precious and every moment is preserved in ice. You are drifting in this archive now. You are one of the unique things. You are floating through a world where nothing is replaced and nothing is discarded. Every shape is a success. Every journey is a masterpiece. Think about the arms of our crystal again. See how they shimmer in the diffused light. They are translucent, catching the faint glow of the earth below and the hidden moon above. If you look closely at the flaws, the tiny air bubbles trapped inside the ice, or the slight asymmetry where one arm is a hair shorter than the other, you realize that these are the most beautiful parts. These are the markers of reality. A perfect snowflake, one that was perfectly symmetrical and perfectly clean, would be a boring thing. It would be a machine part. But our snowflake is alive with its own history. Its imperfections are the proof that it has lived, that it has struggled, and that it has survived the chaos of the cloud. The journey through the library is a long one. The snowflake is in no rush. It knows that its time in this form is limited, that eventually it will reach the ground and its geometry will begin to fade. But for now, it is a king in its own right. It is the only version of itself that will ever exist. It is a star that has never been seen before and will never be seen again. Let that sense of uniqueness settle over you like a warm blanket. You don't have to be like anyone else. You don't have to follow anyone else's path. Your journey is your own, and the shape you have taken is the only one that could have been made by the life you have lived. You are a volume in the library of the unique. You are a star in the winter sky. The cloud is starting to thin out below us. We can catch glimpses of the dark world waiting for us. The tops of the pine trees, the frozen rivers, the quiet rooftops of houses where people are dreaming. The snowflake is ready. It has finished its diary. It has built its palace. It is a complete and perfect individual, a singular expression of the universe's creativity. I want you to feel the quiet pride of the crystal. It has come so far from that tiny speck of dust and that single molecule of water. It has endured the cold, the wind, and the dark. It has grown arms to reach out and touch the sky. It has written its story in the ice. And now, it is ready to share that story with the world, even if only for a fleeting moment before it vanishes. There is a grace in being unique. There is a dignity in being the only one. As we drift further down, leaving the high library behind, the air becomes a soft, welcoming whisper. The snowflake catches the current and sways back and forth, a silver pendulum in the dark. It is unhurried. It is at peace. It knows who it is. The silence of the falling snow is the sound of billions of unique stories all being told at once, a quiet roar of individuality that blankets the world in a white, muffled peace. You are part of that silence. You are part of that story. You are drifting, unique and irreplaceable, into the deep, dark velvet of the night. Every breath you take is a molecule of vapor. Every thought you have is a branch of ice. You are building your own geometry, your own pact with the silence. And it is beautiful. It is perfect. It is yours. The snowflake is ready to land. The library is closing its doors for the night, but the stories remain etched in the ice and the memory of the wind. Drift now. Drift into the uniqueness of your own dreams. The sky is wide and the world is quiet. There is only you. There is only this moment. There is only the snow. The final page of that icy diary has been written. And now, the heavy, shimmering weight of its own existence begins to pull our star away from the cradle of the clouds and into the waiting arms of the world below. It is a moment of profound transition, a quiet surrender that marks the beginning of the most beautiful part of the journey. For so long, our snowflake has been a creature of the heights, a child of the updrafts and the swirling mists, growing and expanding in the frantic, freezing nursery of the storm. But there comes a point where the geometry is complete, where the branches have reached their limit, and the sky can no longer hold the masterpiece it has created. Gravity, that ancient and patient force, finally whispers a command that cannot be ignored. There was a time, long ago, when people looked up at the falling snow and felt a sense of dread, believing that the sky itself was fragmenting, or that the gods were casting down cold, hard stones of judgment upon the earth. They saw the snow as a cold, dead thing, falling with the same indifference as a mountain slide. They imagined the air was filled with a chaotic, heavy tumbling, a rush of frozen rain that sought only to bury the world in an icy grave. But as we drift downward now, caught in the gentle embrace of the lower atmosphere, we realize that the truth of the fall is far more tender. It is not a plummet. It is a dance. It is not a death. It is a slow, rhythmic descent into a state of absolute peace. As our snowflake leaves the cloud, it enters a new world of physics. Up in the storm, it was tossed about like a leaf in a gale. But down here, in the calmer air beneath the cloud base, it discovers the secret of its own design. Those long, lacy arms, those intricate fractal branches we watched it grow, they were not just for show. They are its wings. They are its parachutes. Because the snowflake is so light and its surface area is so vast compared to its weight, it does not fall the way a drop of rain falls. A raindrop is a streamlined bullet, slicing through the air with a single-minded purpose to reach the ground. But a snowflake is a negotiator. It talks to the air. It argues with the wind. It uses its wide, six-sided geometry to catch every molecule of nitrogen and oxygen it encounters, turning the fall into a slow, languid meander. Imagine the sensation of this movement. You are no longer fighting to grow. You are no longer struggling to stay aloft. You have simply let go. You are rocking gently back and forth, side to side, in a motion that feels like a cradle being swayed by a mother's hand. The air beneath you feels thick, almost like water, supporting your weight and turning your descent into a graceful, silent waltz. You are drifting through a cathedral of gray and silver light, falling at a speed that is barely faster than a breath. It is a state of total weightlessness, a surrender to the flow that is the ultimate form of relaxation. And as you fall, you notice something strange and wonderful. The world is becoming quiet. We have all stepped outside during a heavy snowfall and felt that sudden, muffled hush, as if the entire planet has been wrapped in a thick, velvet blanket. Many people believe this silence is simply because the birds have stopped singing or because people have retreated into their homes. But the silence of the snow is a physical reality, a miracle of acoustics that happens right here, in the air around our falling crystal. You see, because of its complex, lacy structure, our snowflake is not a solid object. It is a labyrinth of tiny pores and hidden chambers. As it falls alongside billions of its brothers and sisters, These crystals act as a massive, airborne acoustic foam. When a sound wave, perhaps the distant bark of a dog or the rumble of a far-off car, tries to pass through the falling snow, it gets lost. It enters the maze of the ice branches and bounces around, losing its energy, getting trapped in the microscopic pockets of air between the crystals. The snow is literally drinking the sound of the world. It is a silent curtain being drawn across the earth, a gift of stillness that the sky offers to a noisy world. To fall as a snowflake is to be a part of that silence. It is to be a harbinger of peace. The view from here is breathtaking. We are passing through layers of air that are crystalline and cold, a pure, biting clarity that feels like a tonic for the soul. Above us, the cloud we left behind is a vast, charcoal gray ceiling fading into the distance. Below us, the earth is rising to meet us, but it is doing so with a slow, hypnotic grace. We can see the dark, jagged lines of the forest, the trees standing like silent sentinels, their branches already beginning to turn white. We can see the frozen ribbons of rivers, locked in their own winter sleep. We can see the soft, golden light of windows in small houses, where the world is warm and oblivious to the microscopic miracle drifting past their glass. In this space between the sky and the ground, time seems to dissolve. There is no hurry. There is no destination other than the one the wind chooses. Our snowflake tumbles slowly, a silver coin spinning in a well of gray. It passes other flakes, each one a different chapter from that vast library of unique things we explored before. They drift together, a silent, shimmering parade. They do not collide. They move in a synchronized, fluid harmony, caught in the same invisible currents. It is a collective journey, a billion individual stories all heading toward the same quiet conclusion. I want you to think about the beauty of this surrender. In our lives, we are often told to push, to strive, to reach. But there is a time for the fall. There is a time when the work is done and the only thing left to do is to trust the air. Our snowflake is the master of this trust. It does not fear the ground. It does not worry about where it will land. It knows that the same laws of the universe that built its six-sided heart will guide its descent. It is at one with the wind. It is at one with the gravity. It is at one with the silence. As we move lower, the air becomes slightly warmer, slightly denser. The snowflake feels a new sensation, a slight dampness, a softening of its sharpest points. It is becoming part of the world of things. It is no longer a ghost of the high places. It is becoming a tangible, heavy presence. The dance is reaching its final movements. The swaying becomes more pronounced as the air currents near the ground become more complex, swirling around the eaves of houses and the needles of the pines. Imagine you are that crystal, rocking in the lullaby of the atmosphere. The world is so close now. You can smell the wood smoke from a chimney. You can hear the faint, muffled crunch of a distant footstep on the old snow. But you are still in the hush. You are still in the dream. You are a silver star descending into a world of shadows, bringing a tiny piece of the sky's perfection down to the dust. The ancient misconceptions about the snow, that it was a cold, harsh invasion, fade away when you realize that every flake is a labor of love, a masterpiece that took miles of travel and hours of growth to complete. It is a gentle landing, a soft touch, a quiet shhh whispered to the earth. The snow does not fall on the world, it embraces it. It covers the scars of the land, the broken branches and the muddy paths, hiding them under a layer of pure geometric grace. It is a reset, a clean slate, a moment of absolute whitewashed clarity. Feel the peace of that descent. Let your own mind fall with the snow. Let your thoughts sway back and forth, losing their weight, losing their urgency. You are drifting toward a soft landing. You are moving toward a place of rest. The world below is waiting for you, not with a crash, but with a velvet cushion of silence. The air is very still now, near the surface of the earth. The wind has dropped to a whisper. The snowflake hangs for a moment, suspended just a few feet above a dark green pine branch. It is a moment of pure, breathless anticipation. The journey of the fall is almost over. The long, rhythmic dance of the sky is coming to an end. But in this final drift, there is a sense of completion. The star has found its place. The diary is about to be placed on the shelf. Everything is quiet. Everything is still. The snowflake tumbles one last time, a slow, elegant rotation that catches the faint light of the world. It is beautiful. It is unique. It is silent. As we prepare for the landing, let the silence of the fall become your own silence. Let the weightlessness of the ice become your own peace. You are falling into the deep, dark, and beautiful night, carried by the invisible hands of the world. You are safe. You are drifting. You are the snow. And the world is waiting in perfect, muffled stillness to catch you. The long, rhythmic swaying of the sky finally finds its anchor as our silver star settles into the quiet embrace of the earth below, concluding its descent with a touch so gentle, it seems to exist in the space between breath and silence. It is a moment of profound union, where the celestial traveler finally meets the terrestrial world it has been dreaming of since it first took flight. We have followed this single molecule of water through its long and difficult transformation, watching it shed the heaviness of the lake to become a ghost, a seed, a hexagon, and finally, a star of impossible complexity. And now, as it rests upon the dark, fragrant needle of a pine tree, we are witnesses to the most beautiful part of the mystery, the end that is not an end, but a quiet, necessary return to the beginning. In our human lives, we often look at the melting of a snowflake with a sense of melancholy. We see the disappearance of that perfect geometry as a loss, a tragedy of transience where a masterpiece is destroyed by the very world it came to visit. We have spent so much time admiring the library of unique things that we find it hard to watch a book being closed. We imagined, in our ancient misconceptions, that the snow was a static thing, a cold blanket that brought a finality to the year. We thought of winter as the death of the world, and the melting of the snow as a messy, chaotic disappearance. But as we sit in the stillness of this winter night, watching our crystal begin to change once more, we see a much deeper truth. The snowflake is not being destroyed, it is being liberated. It is completing a pact that began millions of years before we ever walked the earth. Imagine our snowflake now, perched on that pine needle. It is a masterpiece on display for an audience of one, the cold, dark forest. For a few heartbeats, it remains perfect. The 6 arms are still sharp, the fractal branches are still crisp, and the heart of dust is still held firmly in the center of the lattice. It is a star of ice, shining with a faint, reflected light. But the earth is alive, and even in the dead of winter, there is a slow, hidden warmth that moves through the soil and the wood. Perhaps it is the breath of a deer passing nearby, or the slight shift in the air as the morning sun begins to hint at the horizon. Or perhaps it is simply the natural energy of the world, rising up to reclaim its own. The change begins at the tips. The fine, microscopic needles of the dendrites, those elegant fronds that took miles of sky to grow, begin to soften. The sharp angles of the pact of the hexagon start to round out, losing their crystalline bite. The molecules which have been locked in that rigid, 6-sided embrace for hours feel a new vibration. It is the vibration of heat. In the language of science, we call this a phase change, but in the language of the soul, it is a surrender. The molecules are being told that they no longer need to hold on so tight. They are being told that the work of being a star is finished. One by one, the hydrogen bonds that held the lattice together begin to snap, not with a sound, but with a release of tension. The molecules of water, which have been standing in their perfect, assigned places like soldiers on parade, begin to move again. They slide. They tumble. They lose their rigid order and return to the fluid, chaotic dance of the liquid. The snowflake is becoming a drop of water again. It is shedding its palace of glass and returning to the humble, shapeless form of its birth. I want you to feel the peace of that melting. There is no struggle here. The snowflake does not fight to keep its shape. It does not mourn the loss of its branches. It understands that its beauty was always meant to be fleeting, a temporary gift from the sky. As it dissolves, it releases the tiny grain of dust it has carried at its heart, that speck of Saharan sand or volcanic ash that gave it a reason to be. The dust falls onto the pine needle, returning to the earth, perhaps to become part of the soil that feeds the tree, or to be picked up by the wind tomorrow to start the journey all over again. The drop of water is clear and heavy now. It slips off the needle and falls to the ground, disappearing into the white cushion of the older snow. It seeps downward, moving through the layers of the drifts, past the frozen leaves and the sleeping roots. It is home. It is back in the great, dark reservoir of the earth. In the spring, when the sun grows strong and the world begins to wake, this molecule of water will find its way into a mountain stream. It will tumble over rocks, sing in the rapids, and eventually find its way back to a lake, perhaps the very same lake where our story began. And then, the sun will strike the surface of the lake. The water will grow warm, and our wanderer will feel that familiar lightness again. It will break free from the surface tension, rise into the air as vapor, and begin the long, invisible ascent into the clouds. A new seed will be found. A new hexagon will be formed. A new star will be born. This is the return of the eternal loop. It is the great, silent engine of our world, a cycle of rising and falling, of freezing and melting, that has been turning since the first clouds formed over a cooling planet. Nothing is ever truly lost. The water that made the snowflake that landed on your sleeve tonight is the same water that flowed in the rivers of the dinosaurs, the same water that filled the cups of ancient kings, the same water that will fall as snow 1,000 years from now. The form is temporary, but the essence is eternal. There is a profound comfort in this cycle. It tells us that change is not something to be feared, but a part of the natural rhythm of existence. It tells us that we are part of a world that knows how to recycle its beauty, a world that never runs out of stars to build. As you drift towards sleep, let this loop become your own lullaby. Your day is melting away, just like the snowflake. Your worries, your thoughts, the rigid structures of your waking mind, let them soften. Let the pact of the hexagon in your own thoughts dissolve. You don't need to be a star right now. You don't need to be complex or unique or symmetrical. You can just be like the water, fluid, heavy, at rest. The forest is very dark now, and the snow has covered everything in a thick, sound-absorbing blanket. The millions of individual stories that fell from the sky today are all merging into one great, white silence. The library of unique things has been archived into the earth. The dance of the silent fall has reached its final note. And here, in the stillness of the loop, there is only peace. Think of the molecule we followed. It is currently sleeping in the dark earth, cradled by the roots of the pine. It is safe. It is exactly where it needs to be. And you, too, are exactly where you need to be. You have finished your journey through the geometry of the snow. You have traveled from the lake to the edge of space and back again. You have seen the mystery of the dust and the logic of the ice. And now, the sky is inviting you to close your own book. The air in your room is cool and still, mirroring the quiet of the winter woods. Let your breathing slow down, matching the slow, geological pace of the melting ice. Every exhale is a release. Every inhale is a return. You are part of the loop. You are part of the rhythm. Tomorrow, the sun will rise on a world that looks different than it did yesterday. The snow will have changed the landscape, and the melting will have begun the work of the spring. But tonight, there is only the cold, beautiful pause. There is only the memory of the star and the reality of the water. I am leaving you now at the end of the journey. The snowflake has returned home, and it is time for you to do the same. The darkness is a soft, velvet blanket, just like the clouds that built the snow. It is wrapping around you, protecting you, and inviting you to let go of the day. The water will rise again. The snow will fall again. The mystery will continue. But for now, let the silence take you. Let the eternal loop carry you into the deep, dark reaches of your own dreams. Good night, traveler. The geometry is finished. The pact is fulfilled. The world is quiet and all is well. Sleep now in the heart of the loop, in the silence of the snow. Good night.